Good afternoon. Kathy and I are delighted to be here today and to share a little story about what we've experienced over the past 6 to 8 months. It seems like it's gone very quickly. Typically, we've been presenting together for over the past decade, it seems like, on various topics and research. And today we've been asked to come and do a brief inspiration, so we'll try to see, hopefully we do a bit of that. It's up to you whether you've been inspired after we share our story with you. But our story is going to be basically on how we've utilized the iPad instead of a device, but really as a mechanism for building relationships, especially in the context of faculty development. I'd like to present a little background. We do work in the United Arab Emirates, and very fortunate to work in the UAE at this point. It's, if you know much about the UAE, it's a very dynamic, very progressive country. We just celebrated our 41st National Day last December, so it's a pretty young country, and in a short amount of time, it really has come quite a long way. You may recognize some of the cities: Abu Dhabi, Dubai. Dubai houses the world's largest building, and the Burj Khalifa. So it really is very dynamic, very fluid. We like that kind of environment. We like lots of opportunities, and in that is the basis for our story. In last April 2012, I remember quite clearly, our chancellor of the three higher education federal systems came to us with a challenge. And basically the challenge was pretty simple. It was, I would like to implement a large-scale iPad project for every incoming student into the higher education system next year. That would be 15,000 students would be entering our three federal institutions. We basically have one for research intensive, a liberal arts, and then an applied comprehensive institution. 20 campuses, about 55,000 students in total, but those 15,000 students that would be showing up on September 1st would be using the iPad. So it's about mid-April when we received this charge from His Excellency, Sheikh Naim Mubarak Al Naim. He's also the Ministry of Scientific Research. And he challenged us with this, and so we quickly went to work to try to figure out how we might do this in literally a matter of a few months. The first thing we did was we looked for some models. You may be familiar and heard this morning the TPAC model. And so we quickly looked at technology, content, pedagogy, and in early May we investigated our infrastructure, which fortunately we were all laptop campuses, so the infrastructure was pretty solid. Pretty quickly we were able to look at the bandwidth and be able to take in and use those numbers of tools. So then we stepped really quickly into the pedagogy portion, which was the people portion, the faculty development portion, and hence this is where the story is going to take us from. I would like to thank a few of these leaders. I can't express enough how leadership at all levels, really the support, the vision, the encouragement has happened from the very, very top. Our Prime Minister, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, was here in September, actually opening up, signing the official opening with John Couch, the Apple Vice President of Education, in an official ceremony. As I mentioned, His Excellency Sheikh Naim has always been a vision for the past 30 years. 30 years he's been leading higher education in this country. And our Vice Chancellor at the Higher College of Technology, Dr. Taib Kamali, was basically the chairperson for the national event that took place. So we'll talk a little bit here the next 20 minutes or so about what this was about. But I'd like to start with, I mentioned that Sheikh Naim said that he challenged us with implementing this project. And you may say, okay, we're talking about the tools and we're talking about handing out iPads. But in actuality, immediately after that, he started with the why. He basically shared very quickly why he believed this was the thing to do. And he said it in one word. You probably heard this before with some of the whys, is that he believed that we needed to focus on engagement. Engagement with students, engagement with mobility, engagement anytime, engagement with each other, engagement with the international community. And so it was all about this great attribute of engagement. We quickly kind of operationally defined that within the context of we needed to get engaged faculty first. And so we did that with this whole idea of building relationships and building faculty. Hopefully this next 1-minute video will demonstrate that clearly. Welcome. My name is Dr. Jace Hargis. I'm the director here at the Abu Dhabi Women's Campus and the Khalifa City Women's Campus. More importantly today, I'm delighted to welcome you all and to be a small part of the I Celebrate. So hopefully you can get a sense about what this was all about. And of course, you know, we're here, we're going to show you some of this positive interactions that took place. But having been in faculty development for the past decade or more, I was extremely pleased and just surprised and overwhelmed with the naturalness, the organic kind of movement that the faculty really took on with this project. I'm not here to say that the iPad is something magical, but what I will say is that it really opened the door as an invitation to a lot of faculty that historically, and having conversations with them, some of the veteran faculty had felt, and you probably have worked with some of your faculty, had felt a bit disenfranchised with the technology, and it kind of got in their way as some of the good teachers. With these events that we held, we had a lot of our teachers who had been around 20, 22, 24 years, and they were stepping up, and they were being reinvigorated and re-empowered with this whole idea of teaching as opposed to technology.
I'd like to add to that expectations were very high right from the beginning. Jace mentioned that it was 14 to 15,000 students who would be coming in this past September, and the expectations were that all of the faculty who work with those students would be fully prepared to do all of their teaching using the iPad. So the iPad was not an option. It was not an add-on to other instructional resources. It was the instructional resource. There were no laptops, there were no textbooks for those students. Everything was digital. So they needed to work quickly together to be prepared at that point. It's also important, I think, to note that, as Jace mentioned, the UAE is a progressive and quickly developing country, and the leaders of the country realize that they have opportunities and resources that not everyone has. And so it is important to them not only to prepare students, but also to lead and to provide models that are beneficial to others in education. So the expectations were high for our faculty and for our students, but also for the country as a whole to succeed and to share success.
So that was the why. We'd like to talk about the how. So how do we get this done? Well, the first thing is we needed to find a way to get a large number of people together and really start to be on the same page very quickly. Again, the clock was clicking. It's early to mid-May. We've got just a couple of, actually 6 to 8 weeks before we go on summer break and then come back fully charged and ready. So we developed and we used a system that we called the iChampions, which was simply 10 representatives from each of the 3 institutions got together, and we really focused on them with a lot of training, both on the iPad, with Apple. But we focused a lot on the champion portion, which was the faculty development portion. And we challenged them with, so what are you going to do when you go back to your campus? How are you going to gain some support? How are you going to navigate through all the politics of what you need to do, what you have to do? And we really, really kind of helped them understand that it isn't going to be as easy as holding a workshop and how to use this tool, but you've got to find some ways to gain this movement. So the iChampions were the first level. We had multiple levels after that. And again, I can't say enough times, you may hear several times, is that they really started to build these relationships, both within their colleges and across the country, which was really quite exciting. The next thing we did was, and this was quite by accident, I guess we were hopeful of this, but we thought, how can we kind of figure out where they're at? You know, we have to start from where they currently are mentally and emotionally, so we thought this was very early on. Matter of fact, it was mid-November. They just had their iPads for a couple of weeks, and we thought we would see how excited they were, because we'd seen a lot of them getting conversations in the hallway. And so we offered up this concept of a celebrate. I developed this in one of my previous universities, where I gathered faculty together, and we just celebrated being a teacher and celebrated the things that we knew and the things that we wanted to do, and how great it was to be in an environment to have an impact on young people and to really, really feel good about this. And so we called it the I Celebrate, which was the whole point was to get together and have a very quick conversation. We had about 41 proposals. 450 faculty showed up voluntarily on their own, and they had a conversation with these little quick chats. We intentionally wanted to make sure that they didn't see this as a conference or an obligation. And so you walked in, and matter of fact, the video that you saw was from the iCelebrate. You walked in, and there was music playing. There was no front, no back, no keynote, no presentations, no microphones. Music was playing. When the music stopped, basically, they started talking. The speaker would talk, and they would explain one specific concrete app. Here's one app that I learned, and here's what I will do with it in this September. After 15 minutes, we started the music up. They rotated around. It was all kind of this big, enjoyable event that they said they got so much out of because they could choose and pick and have these conversations and left with many, many ideas for what to do in September. And as you might imagine, the anxiety was pretty high of, I've got to be fully prepared, because what we didn't mention up front is that not only did we go from laptops to iPad, but we went from textbooks to paperless. Literally over the summer, we did everything at one time. It's a great, exciting place, dynamic place to be.
I think it's noteworthy, the word that JC used, which was voluntary. The expectations were high that faculty would enter classrooms, fully engage students, be successful in the teaching and learning process, but no one said how. So the faculty knew very clearly why we had the iPads and what was expected of them, but no one said they needed to be at specific faculty development at a certain day and a certain time. So the iChampions were volunteers. They went back, worked with the faculty on the 20 campuses on voluntary basis, according to the methods that they chose that were successful for them. And it was voluntary for them to participate in these iCelebrate events just a few weeks after receiving their iPads. And I think that was one of the keys, that faculty could determine what would work for them. So it was very much faculty driven to reach the point of getting an iPad in their hands to working with a classroom full of students who had iPads.
Also at this point, it was very clear to us that this was a different environment. This was a different type of faculty development, a different type of movement that we had to be able to adjust to. And so we talked and we structured and we tried to do what we could, but the key thing was to know when to get out of their way. A lot of times they just wanted us to move out of the way, get to each other, and do a lot of sharing and conversations. And so with that, the next step was obviously to figure out how were we going to communicate very quickly, very rapidly, a very large-scale project in a little bit of time. The first thing we did was we opened up a website. This was in late May, www.ipads.ae. You can access that. It's out there for anyone to look at. But we needed to try to share this information very quickly to a wide audience, but we also wanted to get their voice. And so the first thing we did was we opened up a program where they could share a specific application that they liked, that they thought they could be used in their classroom in September. They shared it out there. Everybody got to vote on it, review it, say things about it. And after several weeks, we then crowdsourced those applications and selected the top 20. Those top 20 were loaded on every one of the 15,000 iPads that were given to the students. So when they showed up, the faculty not only knew what the baseline was that they could use as tools, but they also felt some ownership. They felt a little bit of, this is a part of me. They felt that they had a voice, and of course what that does, it breeds more voice. It breeds more conversations with each other. The second thing is we opened up a project management site that we used Basecamp as a project management site because we wanted to basically allow them to compartmentalize some conversation, so be able to share various discussion boards and files from within each one of these, because we had so many things going on. We needed to find a way that both they could focused and they could broaden it at the same time. So this project management site worked really well. It also worked really great because then we could see and hear some of the conversations. And I know that John Couch himself was looking at some of these, and it was really nice to be able to share those kind of information very quickly to everybody that was involved.
These didn't in any way replace what was going on face-to-face. And so all of the face-to-face interactions, all those relationships continued to build and expand. Faculty, again, determined for themselves what would be helpful to them and what would be meaningful to them. And so colleges began to organize iCoffees and iBreakfasts and iTeas and iLunches, and teachers would get together on a frequent basis and just share ideas and talk about teaching and learning in ways that had not happened to that extent before, in particular across campuses and among faculty who hadn't had a chance or hadn't had the opportunity or much of a compelling reason to work together. And I hope you're getting the idea that the UAE sets lofty goals. Even though 15,000 students came in this past September in iPad classrooms, that's not where it ends. So in the higher education system, there's not a sense of they're doing the iPad and we don't have to. everyone will be teaching with iPad, and all students will be learning with iPad, over 50,000 students within the next year to 2 years. So everyone is involved in getting their curriculum transformed, getting their materials transformed, and changing their teaching practice.
I think it's important to note as well that Kathy mentioned these conversations that were taking place from the iBreakfast to iEverything, it seemed like. We started to notice a different dynamic, not just in the conversations, but in the locations. And so now we very intentionally, we're redesigning our space. We're redesigning our college campus. So where we used to have hallways where you would stop and stand and talk to people, we've built Apple TVs, and we allow them to stop and have these little cafe chats. And we've really completely changed so that we can offer these opportunities so the conversations can take place more often. So once again, it's not about us really leading, it's about us just making sure that we're clearing the way for them, and they're more than happy to kind of say, get out of our way, we've got things to do, and we let them go at it.
So within the campuses, faculty were working together, and across the campuses, faculty were working together, and there were many opportunities. We're fortunate in the UAE in that many international events come to us, and so there was a Global Mobile Learning Congress in which we were able to share what was going on and learn more about the vision for mobile education. The local media was interested in what was happening because it is a national program, and then that attracted the attention of CNN and the New York Times. And so we've been fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to, early on in the project, disseminate what we were doing, and also attract other educators who had been involved in mobile learning to share their ideas with us. So that conversation just continued to expand over the first few months of the program.
This also opened up, again, there's a lot of really unique findings that happened. The faculty quickly realized with this type of sharing and attention that this was much bigger than just their classroom, bigger than even the country, that this could really have an impact in the region and possibly in the world. So the pride really began to come up in them, and they started sharing even more conversations and more conversation with students. Students would have CNN and these folks in their classrooms, and they really started to up their game, and they started really being able to share even more and being prepared for this type of conversations, both internal and external. So a lot of different tangent outcomes that took place in this particular sharing event.
As you heard at the beginning, Jason and I lead 2 of the 20 campuses in the federal education system, and the reason that we're here talking about the national program is that he leads the pedagogy portion, and I'm involved in the national assessment of the project. And so one of the things that we began to do was to collect data and start to learn what was going on in the course of our project. And so we've been fortunate in being able to lead several research projects and get some insights into what's happening from the very beginning. As well, many of the faculty who had not had an opportunity to do formalized research began to work together with colleagues, collect data, begin to analyze, begin to report out what was happening. And so we're thrilled that our first international journal publication came out last week. We looked at the iCelebrate event. We looked at where the faculty were in the levels from substitution toward redefinition of their teaching practice. And we continue to collect data on changes in the facility and the learning environment, changes in student-centered teaching practice, changes in the learning process. We also learned early on that we needed to either adapt or create some instruments because there were not a lot of data collection processes that were specifically oriented at this mobile learning environment. So we've been creating some observation rubrics that we can use that are in the cloud that we can use on an iPad, and some systems to collect teacher creation and student media projects. And so these continue to build.
And we do understand that this is a very nonlinear program that we're trying to, and even from Sheikh Nayan's challenge of engagement. You know, how do you measure engagement? And we're really quite pleased with one of our second or third papers that we've submitted is simply entitled, Measuring the Difficult to Measure. You can certainly measure test scores, and those mean something, but we're really trying to get at something different. What are those attributes of engagement, and what do they do for us, and what do they enhance some of the things that we know we want our students to be able to do after they leave us? If you are interested in the journals, the articles that have been published, we did post those on the iPads.ae website that you can look at if you'd like. So we started with why. We would like to end with why. A nice little bookmark between our bookend between the beginning and end. We do feel like that this has gone really well. We had an iCelebrate in June. There was a request for an iCelebrate 2 that we just had in December. So we went from about 41 abstracts to 80, 450 to about 650 faculty that showed up for this. And they obviously asked for an iCelebrate 3, which I believe is going to be on the 27th of March, tentatively. So before we leave you, the last thing we would like to share with you some next steps, some next swipes that we plan on pursuing.
We continue to encourage faculty to create iBooks, to create iTunes U courses, to create apps, and also to work with students to develop apps, and that is all happening. We continue to develop our systems for collecting information and sharing some of the resources and projects and media that teachers and students develop. We continue to look at how to change the facility and change the physical learning environment as well as the digital learning environment.
And I'm sure that you recall this morning the conversations about iBooks and widgets and apps and so forth. I think you'll be amazed, if you haven't already been amazed by your faculty. Again, we started this in September, and we have faculty who are developing apps, who are developing widgets for the iBooks. Of course, they've already developed iBooks internally for their students. They've already developed and put courses out there on iTunes U. What we're trying to do now is we're trying to help them package that up into developing electronic learning objects with those, with a lot of intentionality about how those are and how we attend to learning by using those objects. And so we're trying to work with some instructional designers and partnering with some companies so that we can now take all those great products and make them make sense within the classroom. Again, we try to dream big. We've got a lot of things that we're waiting to do, and we think we've got a great beginning to work towards the next steps.
We also recognize that the learning environment doesn't end where the students are. It ends everywhere they go. And so we've developed some ways of looking at what happens in the home and in the family and what the impacts are on family learning and sharing in those extended academic conversations. So we're trying to account for the whole learning ecosystem and see what we can learn about it.
And one last part about the research. I'm sure that you all are aware of the New Media Consortium EDUCAUSE Horizon Report. The 2013, I think, comes out in a few weeks. They came out with a preview today. It does a nice, really near-term, mid-term, and far-term example of what they foresee. And we love it because we're actually kind of following that and trying to stay ahead of that curve and doing quite well at enjoying that movement. So that's our story for today. We appreciate your time, and we're happy to chat with you now or later. Anything we can do for you. Thank you very much.